My fight or flight response is very much flight. I've always been told I had imposing presence. A big, heavy frame, well over 6 feet tall, with wide shoulders and solid muscle on top of it. More than once, people have remarked that I look intimidating, like the kind of guy who's not to be messed with out. Some folks at work once joked I'd make a perfect nightclub bouncer. In my younger days, I took that as a compliment. No one tried picking fights with me at school, and if some strangers had issues on a night out, they typically kept it to themselves when I was around. It seemed to mean I was safe from random harassment, or so I thought. The paradox is that on the inside, I'm anything but fearless. The sight of a looming argument or potential brawl sends an electric jolt of fear through my body. It's not just a mild apprehension. It's like a wave of adrenaline that paralyzes my limbs. My mind races, urging me to back away and let someone else handle it. This disconnect between my physical appearance and my internal reaction has been a constant in my life. I'm that big guy who wants to vanish whenever real conflict rears its head. A few days ago, I was outside a pub when I witnessed two men, both clearly relatives judging by their references to shared family stuff, shouting at each other. The tension in the air was instantly palpable, like it could erupt into punches any second. I felt that surge of unease. My heart pounded. For a fleeting moment, my conscience poked at me. Maybe I should step in, try to calm them before it escalates. But then I felt my chest tighten, my mouth go dry, and my muscles tense. I just stood there, glued to the spot, thinking, nope, I can't do this. While I was wrestling with my instincts, another guy, thinner, shorter, probably not as physically imposing, strode up to the pair and started talking them down. He didn't look particularly enthusiastic, but he clearly felt compelled to intervene. I watched this unfold, feeling both guilty and relieved. The guilt came from my inaction, knowing that if anyone seemed suited to play peacemaker based on stature alone, it was me. The relief came from the fact that somebody else was handling it. That man risked verbal abuse, or worse, a stray punch. But he put himself out there regardless. He even got threatened at one point. One of the family members turned on him, barking something like, "Who the hell do you think you are?" But he stood his ground, calmly insisting they should talk it out or walk away. After 10 minutes of heated back and forth, things cooled down enough that the two men parted ways without a punch thrown. By then, I was still standing there in half shock, half admiration. Part of me envied that guy's courage. He wasn't just physically smaller. He also had no reason to get involved. He was just a passerby. He could have done what I did, silently observe, then hurry off. But he made that split-second decision to try and help. Meanwhile, I, the so-called big dude, felt my heart pounding like I was watching a horror movie. Instead of stepping up, I let fear hold me back. It's not the first time I felt that disappointment in myself. Whenever a situation on the street starts to feel volatile, my fight-or-flight response tilts heavily toward flight. In safer contexts, like in a gym setting where I spar with friends or train for an amateur boxing match, I actually relish the physicality. I like practicing combos, enjoy the rush of a controlled fight, appreciate the discipline. But the moment conflict arises in the wild, unpredictable, no set rules, no referees, my calm self vanishes. The potential chaos unnerves me. I remember a time in my early 20s when I saw a bar argument escalating. Even a bouncer glanced at me, maybe expecting me to lend a hand. And I just looked away, my stomach twisting into knots. Now, I'd like to think if I ever encountered someone truly vulnerable, a woman cornered by aggressors, or an elderly person being harassed, I'd push through the fear and act. The idea of failing them haunts me. Yet there's this nagging doubt. What if I freeze anyway? That possibility scares me almost as much as violence itself. I don't want to be the bystander who fails to protect someone who needs it. But so far, my track record isn't encouraging. Even in lesser confrontations, I shut down. I'm torn between trying to forgive myself and wanting to push myself to change. After all, not everyone is built to be the hero who steps in. Some would argue calling the authorities or finding help is enough. But I can't shake the feeling that a man of my size, who is literally training to step into a boxing ring, should have a bit more courage in real-life scenarios. Otherwise, what's the point of these muscles, or this athletic skill, if I won't use them to help someone in genuine trouble? Anyway, that's the truth of it. My imposing stature is just a facade over a deeply rooted anxiety about spontaneous violence. I have no problem squaring up in a controlled spar, but when chaos erupts for real, the flight response takes over, and it's embarrassing. I feel like a hypocrite carrying around all this muscle, but none of the nerve people assume it represents, and I can't tell if I'll ever overcome that. It's an uncomfortable thought, imagining I might go through life leaving people to fend for themselves if push comes to shove. But it's a reality I have to reckon with every time I see a confrontation brewing. Maybe one day I'll discover that spark within me to intervene, or maybe not. For now, though, I live with the knowledge that I'm this scary-looking person who, ironically, is the most scared of real violence.